This is Unbiased, the flagship podcast from Absalom Attorneys. My name is Simbarashe Absalom Murondoti, and joining us today is an accomplished entrepreneur. At a young age, they've managed to blaze trails and to do exceptional work in the startup ecosystem. Ryan Katayi, welcome to Unbiased.
Thank you, Sima. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So you're the founder of farmhut. Tell us all about it. I normally don't want to intrude into people's accomplished profiles. I want them to blow their own trumpets. So can you tell us a bit about what you've achieved, what you've done, and the challenges you faced?
My name is Ryan Katayi, and I'm a co-founder, not a founder. I haven't done this alone. I don't like blowing my trumpet. It's the most difficult thing I'll ever do. But then I think I would just say we've been fortunate. It's a mixture of luck, hard work, perseverance, determination. I mean, I could go on. But then, the highlight of my life has been seeing our product, making an impact in people's everyday lives. And also being recognized not just nationally but then internationally as well.
Okay.
For the work that we're doing. So I think I'm grateful.
So let's talk. I'll help you because I can see you're struggling to blow your own trumpet.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the international milestones that you and your co-founder have achieved.
Yeah. So it's a lot. So we've been recognized in Silicon Valley through Miller Center, which is one of the biggest research firms for startups. We've also been recognized by the Health Prize. They've also funded us as well.
As in the Health Prize.
The Health Prize.
So,
yes.
So farmhut is a big deal. Okay.
Then we've also been recognized by the Clinton Foundation. We've been recognized by the South American Board of Advisors for Entrepreneurs. We've been recognized even in Asia as well. We won a startup award, a World Cup Startup Award.
World Cup Startup Award.
World Cup, yeah. There was I think over 100,000 applicants from all over the world. And we just, from Zimbabwe, so young. I think that was like a year or two so ago. Then, I could write a list. I'll be honest.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. So what does farmhut do?
So farmhut is it's a data-driven startup that is trying to navigate the agri-tech space in Zimbabwe, which is non-existent.
Okay.
Which is very much non-existent. We're losing so much data. I still remember growing up, and we, should always say "Kogna Gunaya" because my feet hurts, and I'm like, huh? Then it rains, and I'm like, why are we not documenting this? Why are we not looking into this? So
the wisdom of the old.
Exactly. And we're losing that all over. I'm going to be a secure soon, and I don't have that wisdom. I'm just like, Google it, but then they're not going to have any way to Google it. So that's what we do. And we also a B2B supplier for fresh vegetables here in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Supply a number of restaurants, even schools. We've just started supplying schools. And also businesses.
All right.
Basically that's what we do, but then it's mostly on the data side and the tech side.
Okay. So can we discuss the legal challenges which startups face in Zimbabwe? I'm sure you would know it on a first-hand basis, being a startup that has broken ground and that has hit the ground running in your space, in the agri-tech space. Yeah. What legal challenges are startups facing in Zim?
A lot. So I think I'll put them this way. It starts as formation, right? I don't know much of law. The law that I know, I have to Google, of which you're going to get some Alabama law, some Delaware law, or some London law. I don't even know how to get case studies, Zimbabwean case studies, or to interpret them. Right? Startups don't have money. So whenever we hear a lawyer, I'm like running away. Like, I don't have money. I can't afford a lawyer. So it started as formation because, an SME and a startup are different. An SME can just go through the whole usual incorporation, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to a startup, there's a number of set of documents that you have to standardize to match international standards.
Mm-hmm.
So to start with, obviously you need a shareholders agreement, a founders agreement. But then in Zimbabwe, I'm not even sure. Like, I don't know law. I don't even know how they're aligned with the articles, right? What takes precedence here in Zimbabwe, what doesn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to Delaware law, no one cares about the articles, right? They want to see the founders agreement, the shareholders agreement, because to them that takes precedence,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's what moves that startup. That's what controls that startup.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that even I don't know. I know you said accomplished. I don't even know, right? And I may be doing wrong. Then after formation, there's taxes, there's NASA, there's this, there's PE, there's this, and I'm like, what are you talking
So
about?
let's pause for a little bit, because you brought up an interesting dimension, taxes, but we'll get there. I want to come in and say, you are so on point and so apt, but and the first challenge that you pointed out, the funding question, the fact that startups are virtually experiments.
Yep.
They are business experiments. You go into business, you ideate, you've got a concept, and you are making this big leap into the unknown.
Yes.
But how do we reconcile that? Because lawyers don't work for free. In fact, I'll let you in on a secret. In Zimbabwe, lawyers are mandated to charge in terms of a tariff of the Law Society. And if they underbill, that's actually an ethical issue that can get them into the crosshairs of regulators. So in your view, how do we strike a balance between the fact that lawyers across the fold are mandated to work for a fee, and the fee is stipulated by law on an hourly basis, and yet on the other hand, we want to encourage the startup ecosystem?
Yes.
Because no country has ever achieved economic dominance without a vibrant startup ecosystem, without people like you and your founder, your co-founder.
It's that products. I mean, and I understand, like, all over the world, no lawyer works for free. And I think, I mean, to be fair, Zimbabwean lawyers, I mean, I think they're one of the most affordable lawyers in the world. I'm not sure about the whole world, but lawyers have seen. But then, I mean, that's the conversation that triggers now to say we need to come up with a startup law, right? Why? Because I don't have money. All I have is some 100% shares in some company, or 20% or 30%, whatever.
In an idea.
Exactly. In an idea that hasn't even seen the light of day. And that's money to me, which I can pay to you. But then the Law Society of Zimbabwe is saying you can't do that. Or I don't know, can you? Right? Because how are you going to value that? Etc. 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 Right? But then no ecosystem, like you said, has ever succeeded without a lawyer or lawyers.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate part is we operate in an environment where we are underfunded. So, like, in Silicon Valley, people get funded. In New York, people get funded. So the first thing, they want to draft a lawyer's thing, they can max out their credit card and pay for a lawyer. Credit cards, right?
Using credit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't have inheritance. Yeah. Like, it's that hard. So you find now people start doing things from their own heads. Right? They start scripting agreements from some state in
Rocket
Texas,
lawyer.
which is exactly
online.
And then there's so many loopholes, and I think you can tell there's so many loopholes. You can even, like, it's broken from the beginning.
Yeah, because there are statutes in Zim, for instance, the Contractual Penalties Act, which provides certain requirements for certain contracts. You're in farming, and the Land Commission Act will provide that, for instance, you can't get into a joint venture agreement with the holder of an offer letter under the Land Acquisition Program without notifying the Ministry of Agriculture and the Land Commission and getting their consent in writing. So there are things like that.
I'm actually learning.
Yeah, there are things like that. There are things like the Contractual Penalties Act, which provides that any agreement for an installment sale of land has to be in writing, So those particular nuances are never going to be on a template that you download from the internet.
Exactly.
So I do agree with you there.
And the worst thing, I mean, we always get farmers coming for legal advice, right? I want to do this, I want to do this, and I'm like, huh? Let me go on Google and try and see like there's a word.
Yeah.
Then I see, no, I don't have knowledge with this. Then you see me, upping like, lawyer friend, this, and I don't even, I'm not a client, I'm not this, so they're not obligated.
Mm,
They're just probably sharing their opinion. Then probably I'm going to advise on that, and you know. So now you get to the point where we can provide our services enough. Why?
mhm,
Because if I can't afford a lawyer, my farmers are not going to afford lawyers, obviously,
mhm,
and they're always getting into disputes. So you
mm,
find now that it becomes a broken ecosystem
mm,
because we don't have that transference of knowledge
mhm,
um, in between startups and even within our own businesses. It's not just the operational legality of the operations, but then also how we're working with our customers,
mhm,
because our customers have needs, and sometimes their needs are random, but then you
mhm,
actually tell this customer needs help, but
mhm.
then you can't tell them go find a lawyer, go do this. I don't
Yeah.
even know how you get me.
So, would you advocate for a dispensation where lawyers are paid in equity by startup founders,
I
where
mean,
we take the risk together? Is that something
if
that you think should be in law reform?
if I were a lawyer, I wouldn't take money. I would take equity. Why? Because I mean, if you really believe in what these people are building, and you're going to work and put the work in it. Okay, to begin with, I believe lawyers are one of the brightest people that we have.
Mhm.
Like
Thank
ever.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do believe that. And I truly believe that we have hubs here.
Mhm.
Hubs don't even engage lawyers, right? You get into a hub, you find startups in hubs. There is no lawyer present. There is no residence lawyer. So,
We just as an aside, we've tried to get into one or two hubs to just partner on some programs. I've seen
mhm.
many lawyers trying. It's almost as if these are cut from different cloths. They are cut from different branches. There is lack of synergy, and I do agree with what you're saying. But how do we solve it?
So lawyers know the law. Um, I mean, Nigeria is already enacting a startup law. South Africa is debating it. We haven't even started the conversation. I mean, we haven't even started to define what a startup is
Mm-hmm,
and how beneficial that is. But
mm-hmm,
then, who best can bring forth that argument other than lawyers?
mm-hmm,
Why? Because you know the law. You know what's in the law. You can interpret it better. You can see where you can fit that startup law. You can draft. Okay, at the end of the day, you're the ones who are going to draft it anyway,
mm-hmm,
right? So it all comes back. It starts in it all comes back to lawyers because
mm-hmm.
you the ball's in your court.
Okay.
But then everyone kicks that ball to entrepreneurs, and everyone is like, SMEs, SMEs, SMEs. And I'm like, I don't even know how to start a draft of any law. All
Mm-hmm.
I can say is, this is how I'm facing it. This is how I think you can do it.
Okay.
Then you are the ones now who
To
can
take the
exactly.
initiative. All right. So tell me something. When we talk of the your ability to attract funding, and you mentioned shareholders agreements,
Mhm.
um, let's talk a little bit about that. Do you think the legal ecosystem supports the ability to attract funding? What challenges have you faced? You brought in some big names.
Mhm.
You've worked with you've won the World Cup of Startups. You've been with House Price, the Clinton Foundation. What challenges in your vast experience have you faced raising finance?
Um, so I'll start by saying, if you want to raise money from any American or US or European investor, or even African, you need to be registered in Delaware. That's a norm, right?
Okay.
You need to be registered in Delaware or
Why?
London. Okay, so Delaware, what they've done is they've standardized their so-called template, right? You can register a company within 24 hours. But then the best thing about that is the law in Delaware protects the investor, the founder, and the startup. So there is
Okay.
specific laws of protection,
Okay.
right? And every company you can throw it in my face, Facebook, etc. Every company you can throw it. They have a
They've
Delaware corp.
incorporated in
Exactly.
Delaware. Have you?
Not yet. We're incorporated in London.
Okay.
But then Delaware, we're going there, but then not now.
Oh, so you think the forum where you register your company is significant to
It's very
attracting
significant. It's
finance?
very significant. No one is going to fund you with just your Zimbabwean corporation. Why? Because they don't have an office here. they don't have physical presence here. One, two, they have no protection whatsoever. Like, what if I just boat and run? I'm protected by my law, but
But
then they're not.
but there is a law in Zimbabwe that protects, a business person, even investors. There is a robust investor protection framework,
Which is
where
great, but not communicated. You get it now, because conversations we always have with investors is, Zimbabwe this, like this and this and this. You have to give a history. You have to
Mhm.
give, like a preface, like, okay, fine, this is Zimbabwe. Then you start the conversation.
So you're saying there are misconceptions about
A lot,
doing business in
a
Zimbabwe,
lot.
because we do have the ZIDA Act, we do have statutes, and there are bilateral investment protection agreements with host countries and source countries where investments are coming into Zimbabwe. There are frameworks in place to protect, but I get what you're saying in saying that communication is key.
Yes.
So perhaps more needs to be done to debunk certain misconceptions,
Like,
which
I can ask you a simple thing. Where is that ZIDA Act? Like, where is it? Like, where online is it? You get me? Like, if I Google now, like, whatever, like, it all comes back to retention, because the question they always ask, how are you going to remit our money back? Like, how are you going to retain our money?
that's where
That's where everything breaks.
exchange control comes in. But I get what you're saying. But if it was so easy to access, then the whole concept of a lawyer would not exist. So I guess the difficulty is good for many lawyers, unless we want to disrupt the ecosystem.
I mean, I would argue, because in America, like, stuff is so available, but then lawyers are so much in demand and they're so expensive, and you still hire a lawyer.
Mhm.
Why? Because you can't do, like, we can't do an NDA without a lawyer having gone through that. Like Munya and I can't sign an NDA without his lawyer present and my lawyer present.
Mhm.
They have put in, like, in place,
Systems.
like, to say, you can do this without your lawyer present. You can do this without his lawyer present. So either way, I mean, you can find so many ways of monetizing your profession, right?
Mhm.
But at least just let me know what I need the law for. Like, do I need a lawyer for this? Do I need a lawyer for that? I don't even know whether I need a lawyer for anything. You get me? So I'm like, let me just take some Zambian document and just
Edit
put
it.
it through Grammarly
Change the
and
names.
Chat GPT and
All right. So as we close, you've got a crystal ball. Tell me, if you had one wish, you see, we're back to where we were when we were toddlers and young kids.
yeah.
If you could change something about Zimbabwe's startup ecosystem as it pertains to legal development, what would you change?
Wishes with horses.
Would ride.
I'm a beggar in this case. So I mean, I would want to debunk the myth that lawyers are inaccessible.
Mhm.
I would want to make lawyers the most accessible asset in this country, right?
Mhm.
And also debunk the myth that lawyers know everything, because now that puts lawyers in a very peculiar place where,
On a pedestal.
exactly, like,
Yeah.
no one wants to access you. They're not sure if they want to access you. You're like a god, right? And people are like,
Mm.
whatever they say sells.
Mm.
And so I would want a smooth flowing synergy between startups that are forming. Whenever I register the registrar, you're advised, like, you are taking on this lawyer, you're
Mhm.
taking in that lawyer, and that lawyer also has to report, like, this is how it's going, this is how they're struggling, this is how,
Mm.
that kind of ecosystem, like, where there is so much
Synergy.
guidance and synergy.
Yeah. And you are right, because most people make the fundamental mistake of incorporating their companies without legal advice. They just get a standard articles of incorporation.
Yes,
And yet the provisions in there may not be ideal for the particular context of the entrepreneur.
definitely. And people who register the companies themselves are not even lawyers. They're just using the same template that was used for mining in Philabusi is the same that is going to be used for my company, which is a startup, by the way.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay.
I heard a joke once about a person who downloaded, well, it's not a joke at the risk that you don't laugh.
It's a lawyer joke.
a person who downloaded a template from the internet, and they failed to change the currency from Australian dollars to United States dollars.
Oh my God.
And when I read it, I thought it was a joke, but it turned out to be a true true story about an entrepreneur
Don't tell
who
me they lost money.
they did exchange rate.
Yeah.
There are always fluctuations. So anyway, Ryan, that's all we have time for. But this has been phenomenal,
Yeah.
and it's good to be in the presence of greatness. Thank you for
Come
honoring
on.
us,
Come on.
and you and your co-founder. Thank you so much for taking time out to speak to us. This has been Unbiased, the flagship podcast of Absalom Attorneys. Cheers.